Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday, April 16th meeting. This is held both virtual and in person. I'm going to call the meeting to order and start off with a land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, which includes Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Islands First Nations. The Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of the lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. So with that, I'll ask everyone to make sure your cell phones are on vibrate or off so it doesn't disturb the meeting. And remind council of declaration if you see or interest. If it arises, you can declare it then, or if you know now, declare it now. The minutes from the regular council meeting of April 2nd are with us here today. All in order. I'll look for a motion to receive those minutes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, seconded by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, our first item on the agenda is public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment. So I'll look for a motion to go into that public meeting. Moved by Councillor Doherty, seconded by Deputy Mayor Webb. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to Alicia Ashford, Township Planning Consultant. Morning, Alicia.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd like to wish council and members of the public that are in attendance this morning a good morning too. And today I'm going to be providing a brief overview. Oh, thank you very much for whoever pulled that up. That'll be very helpful. Sorry, I did make my screen go a little bit funny here. Pardon me, everybody. There we go. I could only see myself instead of the screen being shared, and nobody likes that. So today I'll be providing a brief overview of the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications that have been submitted by the applicants Rick and Greta Holmes for their property known as 810 Island 26 on Jack Lake in the Methuen ward and identified as part lot 27, concession 8, roll number 1531-010-007-75500. The purpose and effect of these applications is to present for the consideration of members of the public and council applications to amend the Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen official plan and comprehensive zoning bylaw 1995-42 as amended, to recognize and permit the current built form on the property, including the completion of a partially constructed sunroom that's attached to the existing seasonal recreational dwelling on the site. Just for a bit of background, many years ago, a minor variance had previously been applied for to permit the sunroom following a stop work order. And though it was denied on the basis that the development of this structure and the associated encroachment of it into the 30-meter setback to the high water mark, because that did not conform to the official plan, so there was an appeal that was launched to what at the time was called the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, which is now referred to as the Ontario Land Tribunal, and that was undertaken by the applicant as a result of that previous minor variance denial. But that appeal has since been dissolved, and the applicant and the township have been working very closely together to seek a resolution and resolve the planning and building issues on the site together. So that is why we're here today. 810 Island 26 is 0.43 hectares. Acres. It's zoned open space and is designated rural in the official plan. The property is currently developed with a 2-story seasonal residential dwelling, which you can see on the survey here is pretty much in the middle of the property. Multiple attached decks and a gazebo, which you can see is sort of surrounding that dwelling, and a sleeping cabin with an addition, a 2-story boathouse, docks, and a septic system. The applicant is proposing to recognize and permit the development on the property as it currently stands and to permit the completion of, in addition to that seasonal residential dwelling, which I had mentioned was started work and then was previously the receipt of that stop work order, as permits weren't obtained prior to construction. The current zoning and official plan designations for the island do not permit most of the existing development on the site. So the rural designation does permit a single detached dwelling and overall limited residential uses. And you can see from the survey here, the width of the island results in fairly reduced setbacks to the high water mark. It's not that it's a super deep property. So the official plan does specify that the development is not permitted within 30 meters of the high water mark. So that's the required setback. Therefore, an official plan amendment is required to bring that built form into conformity with the official plan. And you can see obviously there the initial seasonal detached dwelling in a sort of rectangular form was permitted, but with the additions to it, those are the components that resulted in nonconformity with the official plan. So yes, an official plan amendment is required, and that amendment would permit the cottage as it exists currently, which, as I mentioned, part of that cottage initially was the subject of approved building permits, but we're also seeking to approve the proximity of the main dwelling to the shoreline, all structures within the high water mark that you can see as presented on the survey here, and the encroachment of the proposed and partially built addition towards the high water mark. And as I'm not the one sharing my screen, I can't sort of show you my mouse, but it's that sort of almost L portion towards the plan north of the site is the addition in question. An environmental impact study was conducted in support of the planning applications that are being proposed, and that study does confirm that the current built form as it stands and the proposed completion of the addition is acceptable from an environmental standpoint. Now, for the zoning, the open space zone does not actually permit any of the uses or structures on the site because it is for open space use rather than seasonal recreational or residential. Therefore, a rezoning to a site-specific island residential zone has been proposed, and the site-specific zoning would capture the current built form with an attached schedule, which is actually the survey that you can see on the screen now. That will be attached or is proposed to be attached to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And that would then limit the development on the site to the current footprint of all structures and setbacks from the high water mark, from that continuous front lot line, which is just the boundary of the island, and from surrounding structures. So that would really enshrine what is currently existing, and that would be what is permitted at that moment. So the proposed zoning bylaw text, though, that is also going to be associated with that provides site-specific amendments to the zoning provisions. So there would be a site-specific amendment for the section 4.37, which requires the minimum 30-meter setback to the high water mark, and the coverage and front yard setbacks requirements of the island residential zone. And the zoning bylaw amendment would also have the effect of recognizing and permitting the sleeping cabin, which you can kind of see is planned southeast of the dwelling there by recognizing and permitting it in the current location, which is closer to the water than the principal dwelling, which is not currently permitted by the zoning bylaw. Township planning and building staff are currently working with the applicant to determine the extent of building permits that are going to be required going forward. So we're kind of in a technical review phase right now. And once that technical review of all the structures and the septic system that currently exists on the site is complete, then staff can bring a recommendation before council. So today's just the public meeting to answer questions, hear feedback, and then that recommendation can come later. One of the questions that will be explored through this technical review is the proximity of some of the structures that were built without permit to the existing septic system, and the confirmation that the septic system meets building code requirements. And that's because township staff need to confirm that the code is being met in order to zone accordingly. So as an example, we can zone down to building code requirements, but we cannot zone beyond the bare minimum for building code. So that is the plan going forward. And following the review and assessment of this application within the context of the relevant land use planning policies, it is township staff's opinion that subject to the eventual conformity with the official plan, that the current development and the applications themselves would conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the County of Peterborough official plan, and of course the township official plan once that amendment would be carried forward. And then that would make it consistent with the provincial policy statement as well. And of course, that's also pending the building code compliance being determined too. Public notice was posted on site and mailed to surrounding property owners in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. And overall, this concludes the staff presentation portion of the public meeting. But now, of course, I'm happy to answer any questions that council or members of the public might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. And yeah, so the next part of this meeting will be to look for anybody wishing to speak in opposition. I will be asking that 3 times, followed by anybody that wishes to speak in favor of the application. We do have Councillor Clements online here. So if she wants to ask any questions, she'll need to speak up. Sometimes I can't see everybody on the screen. So anyway, so I'll start off by, for the first time, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition of this application? Second time, anybody wishing to speak in opposition? And third time, anybody? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if am I unmuted at this point?
You're unmuted. Could you state your name and?
It's Dave Hoyle. I'm not an adjacent neighbor, but 1 cottage over, and I also own an island that is designated as open space, just around the corner, and that's why I'm interested to see how this ended up being totally built on something that was designated as open space. That's confusing to me.
Okay. Alicia, do you have the answer to that?
Can provide some clarity through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so there were some changes in zoning throughout the decades. Effectively at one point, and I apologize, I do not have the exact dates in front of me at this time, but there was a transition of the zoning where at one point it was not zoned open space, resident or open space, and I cannot confirm that it was zoned island residential or residential, but it was not zoned as open space. So it was not that the uses currently there were prohibited, but as a result of updates in the zoning bylaw from the 70s, so the 1977, I think then the 1979 bylaw, and then now, of course, we're working with the 1995 bylaw, there was a change on the property. So that provides at least some background as to how it was, potentially conveyed as a developable property. I can confirm that there was a building permit for the initial sort of rectangular structure that was the seasonal residential dwelling. And as well, the boathouse was permitted by the township. So that was previous to the current legislation that the township has in place right now regarding boathouses. So those 2 structures I can confirm we do have permits for. And now, of course, there has been some development on the site that is not in compliance with the zoning bylaw, and that was recognized through the stop work order, and now that is effectively the purpose of the applications is to recognize it all. And going forward, because the survey will act as the zoning bylaw schedule, any further development on the site that does not completely conform to that survey would require a further zoning bylaw amendment or would not be in conformity. That provides a little bit of background, but of course, happy for follow-up questions.
I know on an open space island, the taxes involved are quite low. I don't know how the township tracks taxability on this property, but hopefully it sounds like there's 2 different sides to the township. That there's one that looks at the official plan, and the building side doesn't seem to look at what the planning is called up. So I'm just confused on designations and how impact follows any of this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that from the township planning consulting perspective, I can't speak to taxation or any of the evaluation on the property. I can only speak to the official plan designation and the zoning bylaw. But if there's anybody else who can or would like to speak to that, I'll pass the torch on.
So our planner, Aria, wishes to speak to that.
Through to you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, absolutely. I can confirm that Alicia's commentary is correct. There were permits that were issued for the recreational dwelling unit. Now, bear in mind, these permits were essentially issued back in the 80s and the 70s, and some of the site plans since then have either deteriorated in terms of clarity or they're not present. They're old documents. However, the permits do exist. And the boathouse was created via, I believe, a minor variance that was done back in 2000. Permits were issued for that too, all of it as well. And in relation to taxation, I believe that is more of a question for the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, as they are the ones who handle assessed values.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hoyle.
Okay.
Rod McIver, I have a question as well.
Okay, go ahead.
We are the adjacent island to the homes. We are probably less than 50 meters away from their boathouse. We were always confused as to how that did receive a permit, as we were never notified of that. It has many items in it, meaning bedrooms, running water, bathroom, kitchen. So it's essentially a cottage, how that could have happened in the 2000s. But regardless, we have also done modifications to our cottage over the years, have applied for permits well before starting building and been granted those, which was kind. But we're confused as to how you can go ahead and do all of these things which were against the bylaws at the time, and after the fact ask permission, and just everyone's washing their hands and going, no, this is fine. We'll just change the bylaws to essentially punish everyone else who tried to do it correctly. You have stated many times that the permits were applied for after they built the structures. Now, how is that possible? How would they be granted? Like, it doesn't make sense to the neighbors.
Well, thank you, Mr.
How do we
McIver.
know? And I guess my fear is, how do we know it won't happen again? Because it just seems to keep going.
So that's what the process is today. That's why we're doing this public meeting, and there's been no decisions made as of yet. So that's where we're at, and we're looking at all the options that'll be here. So. Okay.
Thank you.
So then we wanted to make it clear on record. We're very, very concerned about the fact if he gets granted this to happen, that it feels like a slap in the face to everyone else who did everything properly.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for the third time, is there anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition of this application? Seeing none, is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of the application?
Your worship, is this my opportunity to speak? It is Kevin Duguay. I am the planning consultant for the homes, or should I wait until other persons wish to speak?
It's totally up to you. I'm going to ask 2 more times if there's anybody wishing to speak in favor. If you want to do it at the end or now, you can do it now.
Your worship, I'll allow, if in the event there are persons wish to speak in support, I'll allow that, and I would speak at the end if that's permissible. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so second time, anybody wishing to speak in favor of the application? Third time, anybody wishing to speak in favor? Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, your worship, members of council. Alicia, thank you for your presentation. For the benefit of parties that are Mr. Hoyle and Mr. McIver that are listening, I am a professional planning consultant, having over 35 years experience throughout Ontario. And I was retained by Greta and Rick Holmes on April 23rd, 2023, approximately a year ago, to address once and for all issues relating to the zoning, official plan designation, and development of their property. Now, to put in perspective, the boathouse structure that exists on the property was subject to a permit. Its construction, its configuration, use comply with the zoning bylaw. So there would be no need necessarily to have the subject zoning bylaw address its existence. I'll speak in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, the overall intent of the zoning bylaw. The existing dwelling, with the exception of the partially constructed sunroom, was also subject to a permit. There appears to have been a small mudroom addition installed, and I don't have access to the share screen, so I'm not actually, but I can say that mudroom is located on the more southern portion of the building. It has no plumbing fixtures. It simply reflects the home's enjoyment of the property, having a number of grandkids that can, enter the cottage. Instead of going right into the cottage, use a mudroom to remove boots and clothes and the like. The bunkie structure, which Ms. Ackroyd referred to earlier, the Holmes have confirmed that in prior times, a township building inspector, not Mr. Toms, on other buildings, was on the property, looked at the bunkie and said, "Oh, that's fine. There's no permit issue." However, this zoning bylaw will recognize the location configuration of said structure. So we acknowledge that the cottage building has a partially constructed sunroom, which was subject to a then minor variance application under section 45(2) of the Planning Act. It was ultimately contested and considered at a tribunal where it doesn't even appear there was a final conclusion. It just sort of sat in limbo. The Holmes at that point reached out to my office to see if I could assist with the requisite land approvals for this property. So two applicants, Your Worship, Council, is a policy exception to the official plan to permit the structures on this property. Now, it will acknowledge that it will speak to specifically the pending sunroom addition. That's the reason for the policy exception, is the sunroom addition only. Now, to warrant and justify the sunroom addition, the Holmes have retained the services of Chris Ellingwood, a professional biologist who has prepared 2 environmental impact studies, both confirming that this modest structure, which again will have no plumbing, no fixtures, is simply an elevated structure built actually atop a large rock outcrop, is appropriate and will have no ecological, biological, or environmental impact on the property. And that is important because the setback of 30 meters from the high water mark, one of the measures it's attempting to ensure is addressed is environmental impact, and there is none in this instance. So I'm satisfied that the sunroom addition from an environmental context does not represent an environmental issue. Now, with respect to the zoning bylaw, Your Worship, in one of my, I have prepared two different planning reports and one supplementary report. I just wanted to provide council and one of the previous speakers an understanding of some of the zoning. In 1974, this property was zoned as rural. In 1977, this property had no zoning. There was no zoning assigned to this, and actually other island properties. You look very carefully at the maps, there was no zoning. In 1995, by way of bylaw 95-42, this property once again actually had no zoning. In 1999, through an update and consolidate of bylaw 95-42, the property was zoned open space, notwithstanding there was already a cottage built on the structure. Now, if you examine some of the area property, island properties, they appear to have this similar zoning. In other words, built structures predating potentially the 1990 bylaw, but zoned open space. So those same properties would be in the same predicament as the Holmes property would be today. But the zoning will create a site-specific zone. It will recognize the permitted boathouse. It will recognize that portion of the seasonal dwelling that was subject to permits. It will also recognize and permit the partially constructed sunroom. It will also serve to recognize and permit the mudroom, which might still require a building permit. That's a matter that Ms. Ackroyd just spoke to earlier. It will recognize and permit the bunkie, which may or may not require a permit, but certainly it will recognize its location. So we'll have a policy exception that will permit the sunroom, a zoning that will square up and resolve the use of this property once and for all and place it into an appropriate zoning category. To the previous speaker, there was a query made about what if this continues? Well, if this zoning, Your Worship, Council has put in place, it clearly delineates what can and cannot happen on this property. And in order for any further work to occur, it would warrant and require an amendment to be made to the zoning bylaw and likely an updated environmental study. Now, the Holmes have been chipping away at this property for several years, at least 4 or 5 years before my time. They have expended considerable monies, updating surveys, environmental studies, lawyers. They've retained my services to get to this point. And I am satisfied, Your Worship, that we have arrived at a point where we have an appropriate amendment to the official plan and an equally appropriate site-specific zoning, both of which, as you heard from your planning consultant, are consistent with key provincial planning documents, and from my perspective, do represent good planning. I'm also would advise the council. I spoke with your planner yesterday, and Aria and having your planning consultants have been extremely helpful. We actually conducted a site inspection. We've worked very closely to resolve this unique property and its circumstances. But to that end, I'm certainly happy to continue working with staff and your chief building official to address the matters of building permits and to address the matter of the existing raised bed septic system, which I can advise council, bear with me, I need to check one of my notes, was installed in 1992. There is a permit, and there have been subsequent inspections made with respect to its capacity and location, and to date, there's been no issues raised with same, but we would include that as part of our technical review. Your Worship, it's been of a lengthy explanation, a bit of a whirlwind to get here, but we have an official plan amendment, site policy exception, site-specific zoning. We have an updated survey that will confirm to establish the location, configuration, and massing of buildings, some of which are permitted, some of which may still require a scope or a focus permit. But collectively, it represents an appropriate solution for an island property that has a long-standing use as a seasonal residential cottage. Your Worship, council members, I make myself available to respond to any questions you may have at this time, and thank you for hearing me out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to open up to council. If you have any questions or comments around this? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really know where to start. So I think it was Mr. McIver made a comment in terms of there were structures built on this property without a building permit or before they received a permit. Is that true?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So the main concern that kind of brought this process into effect was the initial development of the sunroom addition that has been referred to a few times. So as I mentioned, it's kind of like that L shape at the top of the dwelling unit. So the construction for that addition had begun without a building permit. A stop work order had been placed by the township. And then following that, subsequently, there was the application for the minor variance, which was denied. The appeal was launched. As Mr. Duguay had mentioned, it kind of sat in limbo sort of for a little bit. And then since then, we've been working to rectify this sort of stopped work and see how we can move forward through the planning process.
Okay, and then there was also reference to, I believe it's a boathouse with living quarters and plumbing and whatnot in it. Was that built without a permit? I think the comment was made that there was a building inspector out there and he said it was okay, but it doesn't sound like you're gonna carry much weight in court in terms of telling a story. So can you maybe fill me in terms of what happened there?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So there's two specific structures that I think have been referred to back and forth, and that was the sleeping cabin, and then that was the two-story boathouse. So the two-story boathouse, which is on the northern part of the island, it has received a building permit. That was the one that Aria had referenced. That had received a permit back in about 2000, which preceded the current legislation at the township regarding boathouses. So it received a permit. We've looked at those permits and we've looked at those initial building plans. So the township, from a planning perspective, is satisfied of the boathouse. The only sort of contribution that the boathouse would have to our planning, like the zoning bylaw amendment, would be that the zoning bylaw text that we're also including will capture the coverage that the boathouse contributes. And that's specifically because the island residential zone permits only 4% off the top of my head in terms of lot coverage, and the applicants are seeking to permit the existing coverage, which is about 10%. So we're just going to be capturing that. And again, through the schedule, it's just going to sit as it is and say, you know, it's going to be finally recognized because it was done through permit. The sleeping cabin structure is the structure, I believe, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, Mr. Duguay, is the structure that he had mentioned a building inspector previously might have said that it was okay, and I was not present for that conversation, so I won't speak further to it. But what we are doing through the zoning bylaw amendment is recognizing its current location. And the reason that we need to do that, A, is it's surveyed and on the schedule, so it will appear, and B, it is not permitted where it is in proximity to the shoreline because it is closer to the shore than the cottage. Of course, this is an island, so unless the sleeping cabin was kind of either in a very specific location on the site that had a larger deference to the shoreline than the dwelling unit, or within the dwelling unit, it would have to have an amendment. So that's what we're seeking to recognize and permit that. But I will, now pass the baton to Mr. Duguay in case he has anything to add or anything to correct.
Thank you, Your Worship, if I may. I'm assuming protocol permits this. To Alicia, her commentary is correct. The boathouse is permitted. There's no issues with respect to the boathouse. The zoning bylaw will recognize and carry forward the minor variance approval granted. And as noted, because the island residential has certain zoning attributes, regulations, we will acknowledge existing coverage. The structure that I referred to that was viewed previously by a township building inspector, according to my many meetings with Mr. and Mrs. Holmes, was viewed at the time by the building inspector, and the building inspector opined at that time that structure is fine, it doesn't need a permit. However, the zoning bylaw will recognize its location because as built is within the otherwise required 30-meter setback. And if a sleeping cabin or bunkie was ever constructed on this island, it would need a similar approval regardless because the island's not wide enough to accommodate such structure. But the zoning bylaw will capture that feature.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Just for clarification, the boathouse, you said it received a building permit in 2000. Was it built before receiving the permit or after?
Through to the chair, I think I can answer that question. I believe it was built with a permit. So at the same, like it wasn't built prior to the permit. I believe a minor variance application had been submitted. It had gone through the process under the Planning Act. Permits were issued for that structure as well as the decks' size and everything.
Your Worship, if I might clarify, I have reviewed the minor variance decision. I have reviewed the applicable building permit, and sequentially the variance was applied for, granted, and the construction followed, and it was subject to a building permit roughly in 2000.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may as well, I think I've pulled up the survey here. Let me know if I have not, but I can just give a little bit of context. So this is the frame boathouse, which is being discussed, the permitted boathouse. This, pardon me, is the residential dwelling. This area here is the addition that has been discussed as being the construction that took place that we are aware of that received the stop work order. This is the sleeping cabin or bunkie. This is in a decked addition to that bunkie. And then you can see here there are some decks, and then there's some, this is actually the mudroom addition, which is being referred to. And then there are some further decks that, based on our documentation that we have available to us at the township, we still need to determine if these portions of the deck, sort of at the south here, are had previously received building permit. And part of what we are going to be looking through the technical review stage is the proximity of these decks and this mudroom to the septic here. I hope that provides a little bit of clarity.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for that, Alicia. Yeah, that makes it a little bit more clear. I appreciate all the work staff's done on this, and I appreciate Mr. Duguay, your comments in terms of this is definitely good for the township in terms of cleaning this property up moving forward from a planning point of view. My concern is more on terms of setting a precedent in terms of certain things have gone on in this property that sound like you might not have followed all the rules, and as I believe it was Mr. McIver stated, you know, other people have. So I mean, I realize that now we're in a good spot, but how did we get there? And I'm just kind of conflicted in terms of a little bit on that. I think where we are, as I said, is good, but and I'm happy to hear that not all 3 buildings were built without a permit, so it's only the one. But as I said to the rest of council, I'm just concerned about issues like that moving forward, right? Because obviously, you know, we get 3 or 4 of these every meeting. So if we set a precedent here, we better be prepared to follow it. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much to Alicia and Mr. Duguay and staff.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Doherty, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. You mentioned that there was a land tribunal decision, but wasn't really a decision. Well, what did they say? I mean, what was the purpose of it if they aren't going to give it an end result?
Mr. Duguay.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'll do my very best. I wasn't affiliated with the then LPAT hearing. The appeal was made to a denial of a minor variance application under section 45(2) of the Planning Act. And it allows for an expansion of non-conforming use. But the tribunal essentially adjourned the matter, and there was some directive within one of the, and it was actually at the tribunal more than once, but there was no final decision other than a direction from the tribunal that perhaps the appropriate mechanism to address land use would be through zoning and official plan amendment. And that's how it ends up. So the minor variance appeal just sat in limbo. The direction from the tribunal, I'll call it the tribunal, was to consider as an alternative a land use approval by way of official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, hence what we have here today. And I've had lengthy chats with your planning consultant and Ari about how to best approach this. We concluded together that the appropriate land use mechanisms would be an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, and hence we were following the directive given at the time by LPAT panel member.
Seems to be clear as mud, doesn't it? Thank you.
So, okay, does council have any other questions?
I just had one other question, it's a general question, something that Alicia said, maybe she could clarify. So in terms of, you referenced the property and the zoning on this property, Alicia. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of try to jot down quick. So you said 1974, it was listed as rural.
I would like to confirm the dates through you, Mr. Chair, if I could, Councillor Webb, just because there are a few different iterations that you did hear Mr. Duguay speak to as well. So yes, previously at one point, the property was not zoned at all. And then following that, like that was in the 70s. And then in the 90s, at some point there, to Mr. Duguay's point, he said 99. I would like to confirm that for myself before I can actually give a date. But there was sort of like an amendment, a housekeeping amendment effectively, that then zoned the property open space. And so all of these properties that had previously been conveyed as developable parcels, specifically I'm speaking to islands, you know, on Jack Lake and other lakes in the township, they had already been conveyed and sort of in some ways permitted to have development back in the 80s. So for example, this property, to my knowledge, was conveyed and has been developed since the 80s in some way. And then with the new zoning bylaw, there was a new zone applied to the property. So that is why the current open space zone is on the site, and it's not therefore permitted to have any of the development that is on there right now. And so that is the case for many different islands. Obviously, there is also the island residential zone. So there is a recognition. The intent of the bylaw is to have, if you're going to be developing those islands, to have the appropriate zone. So that is what we're seeking to do, is to place that on there, recognize, yep, it's residential island use, but we also need to recognize and permit the existing development as is. So I can, if you'd like, through you, Mr. Chair, and to you, Councillor Webb, I can provide those dates more succinctly. It's just not something I want to list off numbers in the public record without having it
No,
completely
no,
sure.
I appreciate that, Alicia. Thank you very much for your answer. It's not so much the dates I was concerned with. It was just, as I said, the change from, I think the 40 gave me was rural, then none, then open space. Now, all those changes would be decisions of the council at that time to change, or how would those changes come about?
Through to the chair, sorry, Alicia, I was just gonna add something
that's
to
okay,
that. When these bylaws were created, one was in 74 to 77. I mean, at the time, they didn't really have the technology or to cartograph the maps very, very accurately. So it could be a mapping error. It could be that it had been zoned rural, and then it didn't pick up a zoning at 77, and then eventually we're left with the open space zone, which is the issue at hand.
Once we got computers, planning became a lot easier, right? So I understand. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ari. Thank you very much, Alicia. Appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions from council? All right then.
Quick question. Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry if I missed this. So I'm sorry if I missed this, but when there's no zoning on a property, so I'm transporting myself back to the 70s. If there's no zoning on a property, what does that mean specifically? Does that mean someone can just build a hotel or whatever they want on a piece of property?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to you, CAO Ngione. Ideally, if there is development proposed on a property, there would be a zoning going forward that would recognize the proposed zoning. So in some cities or townships, you know, there are zones that actually categorize the fact that we don't know what's going there. So often you'll see like a development reserve zone or something of the sort to acknowledge that a rezoning will be required. I have personally never zoned or done planning in a time frame where there was no zoning on any of the property that I've ever worked on. But I believe the intent is that eventually that is to be recognized through the process. Only like some property wasn't zoned prior to the 40s and 50s in some townships. Similarly, this new zoning bylaw came into place in the 70s. So it kind of was free reign. There was obviously building code and there were some rules and legislation, but it really is municipal specific. And that's honestly the extent that I can speak to that. I'm not entirely sure what the township's process would have been at that time if there was no zoning.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fleckner, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I just have one question about the building that was built without a permit. That apparently our staff said it was okay. Are we asking for a zoning amendment so that we include that building, or are they tearing down that building or moving it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the intent is to include and recognize that the standing built form. So there's no intent without any of these planning applications. One could say like work could not be continued to be permitted, and the township could direct, stop work and tear down of certain structures. That is not the intent of this. The recognition is that the applicants have been enjoying this property for many, many years and decades, and that they would like to go through the proper channels to be able to continue to use the structures on site as they have been. So there's no demolition being proposed as part of these planning applications.
Okay, so then the statement that the other gentleman said on the internet, people can just build what they want and then come here and ask for the zoning bylaw, which is what you're asking us for. And then that part that they put on there that shouldn't have been on there just stays.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are multiple different avenues, and yes, obviously the hope is that previous to any development that we go through those appropriate channels prior to development. With this zoning being on the property, nothing on this property is technically permitted. So because that open space zone applies, no matter what, to permit anything now, if we're going to go back and, we'd have to go back to the 80s to permit everything that is on there, like the actual residential dwelling itself. So part of that is knowing that we would have to regardless to have anything. But yes, this is a retroactive approval that's being proposed by the applicants. And previously they went through the channel of a minor variance at the Ontario Land Tribunal, previously the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. It was the recommendation of the board member at that time that perhaps a more appropriate development application would be the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment. So it is within the township and council's ability to deny the applications when they come forward for a recommendation. In the same way that if there was development that was not permitted, it could be that the building department would be able to issue stop work orders and require that development cease on the property. But recognizing the longstanding use of the property and knowing that now the appropriate channels are being entered, the intent is to recognize that.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Through your chair, the island permitted uses or whatever, it seems like we've pinballed about 3 times with zoning on islands. It's open, it's residential, it's island. What happens if somebody had built a structure on an island in 1950? Is that non-conforming or conforming?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, so that would be non-conforming. It would be non-complying, kind of the same. So it wouldn't comply with the zoning bylaw amendment provisions that are currently in place. So for example, there are structures on this site that are non-conforming and non-complying, being say at one point this was a rural zone. We could determine perhaps through legal structure or legal processes that there would be either non-complying or non-conforming uses. In the example that you're providing, potentially yes. Legal nonconformity is that it's a legal determination. So there would be a couple of different sort of mechanisms in play to officially determine that. But if something was potentially built or developed in an area that did not have any specific rules, or at one point had different zoning and then transitioned, and that zoning, or sorry, that development stayed and continued to be in use and could be proved to be in use for that length of time, that would be considered non-complying or non-conforming. So an example I could give is if there was a commercial use, there was a store in there, at some point it changed to a residential use, but that commercial use stopped operating, then it would no longer be legal non-conforming or non-complying because it was no longer, it stopped at some point. Here we don't have that that case, but I hope that gives some clarity as to what the legal non-conforming, non-complying could mean.
Through to the chair, I just wanted to add one comment to Alicia's comments in the sense that the zoning bylaw is a living document. It changes over time. You know, planning policies always change periodically, and so does zoning bylaws. So something that was permitted back in 1950 or 1960, whenever the first zoning bylaw came into effect, essentially, if it was created and it was permitted by that zoning bylaw, then the future additions may or may not permit it, but it still is a continued use, and it does enjoy those non-conforming rights.
For you, Mr. Chair, I also want to snowball off of something Arya just said. That is part of what was the initial minor variance or legal non-conforming expansion to a legal non-conforming use application that had initially been applied by the applicant back to the local appeal tribunal, which was then said, you know, we don't really think that this is an expansion of a legal non-complying use. We think instead that because of the, you know, encouragement to the water, the scale of the development, for a number of reasons, it would be more appropriate to be done through an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay. All right, then. So we've had lots of good discussion around this, and I think lots of work still to do. So I'll look for a motion that we go back into the regular meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. So moving forward, there's a lot more detail needs to come to council around this property. I think we need to know what's permitted and what isn't permitted. We need to give Alicia time to get the dates together on when all these changes were done. There's lots of work left to do here. So we do have a recommendation here that we receive the balance of the report. But I think we need to bring back some more information before we could ever make a decision on what's happening here, because I think, like the deputy mayor said, it's precedent setting. We don't want to be known as build it and ask for forgiveness later, because that don't work. So
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And just to read, Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask for, at least from myself, what I'd really like to know, Alicia, is kind of the permit history around all the buildings on, so like whether there's a cottage, a boathouse, whatever, even the decks and stuff like that, all that, and when the permits were applied for, and if I could have that would be great.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, through this technical review, that's very much so our intent is to compile effectively a timeline and an inventory of what was approved when, what was not approved when, and how we can ensure that that is recognized in the zoning bylaw appropriately. So that is our next step for sure.
Thank you very much, Alicia and Ari.
Okay, Councillor Doherty, go ahead.
Through your chair. Well, the other point is this phantom approval. Maybe we should put some dates and names around that so we could actually see whether we would have some records at our end that would confirm that as well. And maybe it was okay at the time. I don't know, but.
Through you, Mr. Chair, may I just ask the councillor for clarity? Do you mean the different zoning categories that at one point had applied to the property?
No, what I meant is I believe it was a bunkie or something, and don't worry about it, it's okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe what you're referring to is or possibly the boathouse that was permitted that we have documentation for, and then the bunkie is a separate thing that we have heard that at one point one of the township staff may have colloquially said was fine, but yes, we can confirm that that will be included in that sort of inventory of whether the bunkie was permitted.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so yeah, so the motion would be that we get a lot more detail on this, and we just received the report for today and look forward to some more technical things here as far as what was permitted, what wasn't permitted, dates. A full report is what we need, so that's what the motion would be. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, seconded by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? That's carried. So thank you. Okay, so the next item on here is we're going to move into planning reports. And first, Arya, you're back on. Environmental impact mitigation measures.
Through to the chair. So the purpose of this report is to present for the consideration and requisite approval of council, an environmental impact measures agreement between the township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen as well as the owners of the property located on part lot 7, concession 9, and being also in lot 358 on plan 16. This is in the township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen, but specifically in the urban area of Havelock. The property has a municipal address of 23 King Street East. And this pertains to a severance application, and the title of the file is B-14-23. So the recommendation of my report is that council enter into the environmental impact mitigation measures agreement, recognizing the recommendations of the summary of the quote-unquote summary of recommendations of the natural heritage evaluation. This was completed by Oak Ridge Environmental, and the date of the report is, or the date of the natural heritage evaluation report is January of 2023. And this was a condition of severance, again, application B14-23. So just by way of a background on the property, I think this council has seen this come up a couple of times. So the applicants, John and Deborah Nurse, own a total of 1.06 acres, which translates to roughly around 0.42 hectares of land. This property has a civic address, again, of 23 King Street East. The subject property has approximately 48 meters of, and that translates to about 157 feet of road frontage along King Street East. And it is currently occupied by a single detached dwelling unit with an in-ground outdoor pool. So severance application B-14-23 proposed to sever a land or a parcel of land, I should say, with roughly 0.4 acres, and that translates to about roughly 0.18 hectares, which provides for roughly around 19 meters of frontage along King Street East. The new lot is currently vacant. However, future residential uses should be anticipated. As per the county's preliminary severance review process, the county commented that a natural heritage evaluation was required. So the applicants engaged the services of Oak Ridge Environmental to do their study, and the study was completed again in January of 2023. So in conclusion, the Land Division Committee decision, I believe that was attached also to this report, dated August 15, 2023, listed as a condition of consent that an environmental impact measures agreement be entered into between the owners of the property as well as the township. And this agreement shall be registered on title at the owner's expense. This agreement would essentially regulate future construction by restricting development outside what is referred to as the vegetation protection zone, which is essentially a buffer, a 30-meter buffer from, or 15-meter, 30-meter buffer from the adjacent wetlands that are north of the subject lot. And that concludes my report to council.
Thank you, Arya. Is council's thoughts or the recommendation here?
Quickly, I think I know the answer, but sorry, I get two pictures here with different, I don't have each, I guess it's 61. Basically, what I'm getting at is there's one here that shows there's two different pictures of severance. Is that whole lot is basically being split in half?
I'll have a look at it.
Okay, just gonna write when because there's one that says it's kind of like being turned into an L, and then there's two more below it that show it is just being split in half. So
I thought it was keeping some space
behind
the retained property.
Yes, so through to the chair. The reason for the lot configuration is essentially the lot line can't go through a wetland. I think staff are currently pulling up the site plan just so that I can have a review of it. Okay, right there. Colorful one for you.
So yeah, on that one, and we won't bother showing the other two, but you scroll down further and it has that whole property basically severed in two. So is it this one or is it?
It's the L shape.
That one?
It's
Okay.
the L shape one, yeah.
Thank you.
So I believe the previous one was part of the preliminary severance review. They wanted the lot line essentially to go all the way through, and we were in favor of that. However, I knew that there was some form of a wetland or provincially significant wetland north of the lot. So they had to reconfigure from a planning perspective, I'm not a huge fan of the L shape, but unfortunately, this was essentially exactly just like that. Essentially, this was the configuration to maintain conformity with provincial policy.
Perfect. Yes, just a general question. So yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the planner.
Okay, the recommendation is moved by Deputy Mayor Webb and seconded by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the next item here is with regard to purchase of a road allowance. Right here, go ahead.
Through the chair, the purpose and effect of this report is to inform council of a request from the property owners of the subject lands to purchase the abutting unopened road allowance that is leading to Jack Lake. The property is located on part lot 24, concession 10, and the assessment roll number is 1531-010-007-67701. So the recommendation of my report is that council there's three options really. One is either council approve the request in principle or, decline the request. However, the third option would be that council authorize staff to proceed with a planning analysis of the request to purchase the unopened road allowance, seeing as if that currently at the moment it's just at the request stage. There hasn't been any planning analysis done for the property. And so by way of a background, on March of 2024, township staff received this formal request for the purchase. Again, there has been no site visit conducted on the property yet, and no planning analysis has been completed yet. This is just at the request stage. And that concludes my.
Okay, thank you. And I would say option 3 there is something we need a lot more information on this with regards to the property to the west of it. And we just need a lot more information. When we get to road allowance closures, it's we're always careful at that. So that's what I would like to see, option 3, but it's up to council here. What's your thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Through your chair, where is the road here? Is that the blue line?
That's
And that's the owner's property is the dark shaded one, right?
Through to you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually the yellow is the owner's property. The blue is the unopened road allowance. So the request purchase, if that's the portion, the blue. What you're referring to as the darker portions, I don't want to answer out of ignorance because I haven't done a title search on the property. I still don't know who owns those two pieces. So as part of the planning analysis, I'd be providing that answer for this.
But just to follow so where'd the road come from, I guess, because it seems to, I just don't know where it's going, but that'd be part of the planning analysis anyway, but just curious. Thank you.
Just further to that, so when we get into that, can we, I don't know where this is on Jack's Lake, but can I get basically I need to know how many more open road allowances we have run into the lake in that area. So I mean, if we get into closing this off, how many other access points do we have to the lake for the people that live around there, right? So thank you, Ari.
okay. So my suggestion was that we go with option 3. It sounds like that's moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, seconded by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, our next item here is delegations. We have one delegation today, and that's Karen Laughlin, with regards to the 5G cell tower. So, Karen, welcome.
Thank you. Before I start, I don't think I really need the. So we'll just kind of regard that if that's okay. I have some things to share with you, but I wondered if I could pass them out at a certain point. That's okay?
So are you gonna be referring to the article that we read?
Yes, yeah.
So the public needs to see it, like the public that are online need to see it too, so we do have to
Yeah,
show
I think
what,
she said she just doesn't need it.
you don't need it, but we have to show it anyway.
Oh, okay, sure. Good morning, Mayor Martin, Deputy Mayor Hartwell, and councilors. Peace be with you, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I woke up yesterday delighted to see the sun rising. It was welcome after so many rainy days. I made some coffee and was trying out a new toaster with some cinnamon raisin bread from our Havelock Foodland. Put a slice of bread in, but when I smelled the aroma of burnt toast, I popped it up before the fire alarm went off. Interestingly, it was set to number 5, the highest setting. So I put that slice in the garbage and tried again, thinking maybe the number 3 setting would be perfect. But when the toast popped up, it was almost as toasty black as the first slice I'd burned. So then I reset it down to number 2. And on my 3rd try, I got the perfectly toasted slice of bread. The degree of the setting made the whole difference. So taking my toast and coffee to sit and work on this deputation, I remembered how my mom used to sit and have her toast in the morning and read the morning paper. In today's busy world, we tend to view and not to read, listen, and ponder, but I'm asking you to please do so. I'm not a scientist, but I come from a family of librarians, engineers, and very good readers. In preparing this deputation, I have found a wealth of literature, videos, scientists, and concerned people to whom health really does matter, which, as it happens, is the current slogan on the county's website. Because our health really does matter, I present you with this information today. I quote Mahatma Gandhi, "The future depends on what we do in the present." I come with questions, seeking answers, but also have resources for you to reference in making this important forest through the trees decision. I respect your work and appreciate your commitment to our county. I titled this presentation, "Seeing the Forest Through the Trees," because sometimes it's challenging to see the whole or the long term when the present and what is right before us seems to be of utmost concern. The reason I'm here today is my concern over the potential installation of 5G cell towers in HBM, and I wanted to ensure that you are aware of the legitimate health concerns regarding the welfare of all living cellular organisms involved with the possible implementation of this project. So A, past, present, and future. Recently, I have participated in a public meeting organized to engage and develop consensus for HBM's future. During this presentation, I don't recall seeing or hearing that the installation of 5G towers were a part of this public consultation for HBM's strategic 5-year plan. If you might recall the 1981 song, "One Tin Soldier," from the movie Billy Jack, it relates the need for understanding of what real treasure is. I ask you, what is our real treasure in HBM? Is it people, families, rivers, lakes, rocks, and trees, or is it communication towers? My first question, what are the long-term benefits that HBM would enjoy as a result of the installation of 5G cell towers? I'm aware that there are different needs in our county for residents in various areas involving communications and digital networks. I challenge you to make a good decision by looking at the evidence and consider the long-term ramifications of the intensity of electromagnetic frequencies that continue to be of concern, and not to be hypocritical regarding your posted blurb that health matters. Question 2, what is the long-range financial benefit in dollars to the communication companies by the taxpayers who would be paying for these services? Question 3, are the predetermined health risks to humans, animals, and all cellular organisms on Earth worth the immediate financial gain by communications companies? B, the key issues of concern in Canada. Question 4, what is going on in our democracy? If we look at decisions made in the past where, without appropriate research, instead, corporate greed, haste, and human error and convenience, grave occurrences have occurred. Disasters of such proportion that we cannot imagine until they occur. let's avoid a health catastrophe of unknown proportions. This may seem like an issue not comparable, but we don't know that disasters of epic proportions can be avoided. Some of these are just errors of judgment or of haste. And a lot of times municipal governments have made changes which are wonderful and have great success, like the development of organic farming, control over pesticides, and establishment of recycling. In the past, we didn't know what we now know about the dangers of pesticides and cancers related to Roundup and so on. When you're making a decision about technology, let's not do it blindfolded. Let's read the research. And so I have some research for you. This is number C, the Science and Safety 5G. Take a minute and pass these out. That's something for everybody.
We're not gonna look at that today, so.
No.
You can just leave it there and we can get it later.
Okay. I would have liked to refer to some things.
We could cut a tree down.
Yes. Unfortunately, the help that I got wasn't very thoughtful about that.
I don't have room here. You can just leave it up.
Okay. Thank you. So what is 5G? 5G is the 5th generation of wireless technology, promising to connect the Internet of Things at blazing fast speeds. Industry wants to install millions of new cell antennas in front of homes and streetlights and utility poles. The downside of 5G is this: these antennas will increase the levels of radio frequency, electromagnetic field, RF, EMF radiation designated by the World Health Organization, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, as a possible human carcinogen. The Environmental Health Trust, EHT, strongly opposes the deployment of 5G wireless antennas in close proximity to homes, schools, and workplaces. What will be the cost in terms of our healthcare system, our environment, as the research demonstrates that oxidative stress caused by EMFs affects all living cellular organisms? I was really fortunate in delving into this research to connect with John W. Frank, in which your article number 3, his article there, titled Electromagnetic Fields, 5G and Health, What About the Precautionary Principle? His conclusion warns us of the dangers. It follows that for the current 5G rollout, there is a sound basis for invoking the precautionary principle. This is the environmental and occupational health principle by which significant doubt about the safety of a new and potentially widespread human exposure should be a reason to call a moratorium on that exposure, pending adequate scientific investigation of its expected adverse health effects. In short, one should err on the side of caution. In the case of 5G transmission systems, there is no compelling public health or safety rationale for their rapid deployment. The main gains being promised are either economic or related to increased consumer convenience. Until we know more about what we are getting into from a health and ecological point of view, those putative gains need to wait. So, D, public health, liability. My 5th question: what are the potential risks and liabilities, legal liabilities for councillors and township employees for decisions which, made although well-intentioned, if they have been made aware of the health risks to the welfare of the community? And lastly, breaking trail. My last question: what is the hurry? Why does HBM need to cater to this perceived need when we don't know the future consequences of these actions? There is always something better waiting to be known as the unlimited boundaries of the human mind continue to develop new ideas. We need to envision our future, choosing options. It's really interesting. Timing in life is always amazing, right? As I was working on this, I received this excerpt from an email. I include this excerpt from an email I received yesterday, inviting me to attend a workshop with a French physicist, Nassim Haramein, who is with the International Space Federation team developed new scientific concepts. So in the email was, imagine a world where our energy needs are met sustainably and humanity thrives in harmony with the fundamental workings of nature. A future where we have unlocked the secrets of the quantum realms, allowing us to harness the energy of electromagnetic vacuum fluctuations, control gravity, and gain access to a most infinite amount of resources. It is this joyful vision that awaits us as we embark on an extraordinary journey. I'm thinking maybe we should send an HBM team to France for the conference in April, the 20th and the 21st. You go, Jerry. Because-
Okay, stop, so I'll ask you to speed it up a little bit. Do you guys?
Yeah, the future depends on what we do in the present. I urge you to refuse to install 5G communication towers and instead wait for the next scientific development and have the courage to stand alone and stand for the long-term decisions which will bring health and prosperity to the people of HBM. Mahatma Gandhi again, our greatest ability as humans is not to change the world, but to change ourselves. Thank you kindly. If there's any information you'd like, I have notes regarding the articles. There's just a response on the first page, number 3, from John Frank, who says thank you for asking for this. I include all of his recent publications since 2021 on that, and direct you to the first article. I labeled them for you, number 1 through 5, I think. It's a study out of Turkey about mobile phones, and it shows you how things are measured. So that's a great one to look at. A quick look at the second one is just from the Environmental Health Trust, the dangers of 5G and how to avoid terrible things. Number 3 is Frank's article and his precautionary principles. And then the next one is really interesting because it's international appeal, and this was done in 2015, so many years ago, from scientists, and I include them on your document, 44 countries listing the scientists who asked the UN in this international appeal to stop and wait for the research. So it says there, damage goes well beyond the human race as there is growing evidence of harmful effects to both plant and animal life. They have 9 recommendations that I'm going to do for you. And I listed the different countries. The 5th one is I think one of the most recent.
Time is up.
Okay.
So we will look at that. Appreciate your views on this, and it's one of those things that there's a lot of different views around it, and we just try to make the best decision we
Absolutely.
can.
And that's why I copied this for you, because I know there's so much out there. This tries to pinpoint sort of the specifics of the dangers. I tried to keep it small, believe it or not. Okay. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, a motion to receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Doherty, seconded by Deputy Mayor Webb. All in favor? Carried. So the next item on the agenda here is staff report for information. There's 2 things here. We have Chief Billing Official report for March 2024. Questions around that? The next item is Public Works Department for March 2024. And next item is Parks and Rec, Josh's report for the month. If there's no questions around them, I'll put for motion to receive the staff report for information. Go ahead.
Actually, question around, I didn't see it on the Public Works report. The water station, Pete, how are we coming with the water station?
Through you, Mayor Martin, member of the council, for Deputy Mayor Hart's question. So it is, I followed up with the Flow Point and the salesman, and it is on schedule to be delivered the middle of May. So, and we have received some estimates or quotations for the location up at the water tower for utilities, hydro, and paving as well.
So we should have her installed and up and running by midsummer, right? Or somewhere.
Yes, we want to receive the receive the actual water filling station.
Yep.
And then if we need to have an actual specific location at the water tower located then for us, and then we can run the utilities through it. So, yeah, but it is on schedule.
Thank you very much for the details.
So we'll be making sure it's up and running before we shut the other one down. Okay. All right. So motion to receive the staff report for information.
I've got a question. So is the Rotary Park on a different report or is that
Yes.
different? Park.
Yeah, that was the person, right? No,
I thought we
deal with it
were-
now.
Oh,
You mean the vandalism? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
Did you want to speak to that?
Well, no, I just wondered if we're going to deal with it because we did staff reports and that was the last one. So
Well, there's no decisions to be made on it. It was just information.
oh, okay, that's good to know. We have Russ there. That's awesome. Good thing.
Staff will take care of it.
Josh online.
Yeah. Doc, you want to speak to the ruts over at Rotary Park?
Yes, good morning, Mayor Martin and staff and council. So we have had some vandalism over at the Rotary Park lawn and we're assessing the situation and we've come up with taking the fieldstone boulders that are existing and just moving them and lining the laneway. We have property down the way where there's some more if we need to grab some more.
Does it seem like they're coming in through the parking lot, Josh?
Through you, Mayor Martin, so
Or is
they
that
come in.
backwards?
They come in and park towards the soccer field near the washroom facility. And instead of reversing, they just drive on the lawn by that decorative rock.
Okay.
It has been an ongoing issue for a few years. We've been dealing with that periodically on and off.
We don't have a camera over there, do we?
Through you, Mayor Martin, we do have a camera. When it was discovered, we didn't see the initial person doing it. Multiple people do it now that looks like a laneway is being created. There's an 8-day memory on our camera systems, and unfortunately, we weren't able to catch the first individual.
But we're monitoring that going forward, like probably have it in an area probably where we can catch the license plate at least. I don't think it's so important to catch pictures of the people doing it. Probably better to catch the license plate of the car they're coming in.
Through you, Mayor Martin, yes, we do try. It's always from where the camera is, it's hard to make that out. We have seen a few different vehicles after the ruts have been through there, but I think in order to stop this going further, we're gonna line that laneway with the fieldstone.
Thanks very much, Josh.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right, then. Any other questions? Motion to receive staff reports and information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, seconded by Councilor Flagler. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, before we go into staff report with follow-up action, I'm gonna see if we take a 10-minute recess. So a motion to take a 10-minute recess, moved by Councilor Doherty, seconded by Councilor Flagler. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so come back at call the meeting back to order. Look for a motion to resume the meeting, moved by Councilor Doherty, second by Deputy Mayor Webb. All in favor? And that's carried. Sorry, no. Anyway, so we're moving into staff reports with follow-up action, and the first item on here is youth committee terms of reference. Gary?
Through you, Mayor Martin and councillors. We have, as we've introduced the committee as a committee of council, and as part of that, we've established terms of reference. And for those that may not be familiar, it simply outlines the guidelines that the committee follows. It has our goals, our principles, our mandate, membership details, term, structure, as well as reporting. We've introduced those to council as our recommendations. So this process, we've brought them to our youth committee. We voted on them. They've recommended no adjustments to the draft copy that's been included with the agenda. And the only point that we would like to take a moment and discuss is that the structure, so if you will move to membership, we have 2 members of council and 1 acting as the co-chair, 1 staff member acting as the secretary, which is myself. The 2 members, we have a primary, which is Beth Flagler acting as the co-chair, with our co-chair being one of the 4 volunteers, which is Debbie Otley. We have 2 adults, Debbie is one of those 2 adults, and 2 youth representatives with a number of supporting volunteers. One point that we'd like to discuss today, and perhaps we can get into that a little bit further on, is whether or not we need to dedicate it, because that's the language that's included with the terms of reference today, and perhaps adjust that to be 1 primary representative for council with a backup. In terms of one other salient point that we'd like to discuss in the terms of reference today is the term itself. We'd like to synchronize this particular committee with our annual appointment schedule, which takes place, I believe, this coming fall. So as much as we put the reference and the structure in place, members of this committee are aware that we will have to go through the appointment process again this fall. And we're hoping each of those that are currently holding positions will put their names forward for continued work. So just to make sure we're all clear on that, there'll be assignments or appointments this coming fall. And then coming into the new year, that would start a new term. And then this committee will be synced up with the other committee of councils.
Okay, so I know Councillor Flagler's on this, and I think Deputy Mayor Webb. I was on this for quite a few years when we first started this, and I suggested that we had 1 councillor with an alternate if you so wish. That's the way it used to be. We didn't have 2 councillors on many committees because it makes it awkward if other councillors want to go. It can create a forum. I know we used to have 2 councillors at the meetings most of the time, but there was 1 appointed to it. And the other question I had here, and it's totally up to council, but the staff representative, I know Sherry goes to it and does, I don't know whether you do minutes or who does it, but when we did it back then, and I'm not saying it was right back then, it's just a suggestion that the committee itself did the minutes, and kind of like, I guess, library board. I'm not sure if the library board does that, but I don't think they have a staff person on there. So just a suggestion, we got to watch we don't, overload staff on all these committees. And so that would be my only input, and it's up to council here. So, okay, Deputy Mayor Webb.
Yeah, so on the first point, Mr. Mayor, I agree. That's kind of the way we've been conducting it now. Councillor Flagler's been going to the meetings and chairing the meetings, running the committee, and I've just been acting as the alternate. So, and I agree in terms of we don't need 2 members of council there. I think it's we just step on each other's toes sometimes. What was the second point you made? Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, the staff representative.
Yes, I kind of agree with that. I think I looked at Sherry as well to comment as it is a new committee. And it is something I think, I don't want to speak for myself, I'd like to see this committee be successful in terms of, not run for a year or 2 and go away. So possibly if we could, I'll ask Sherry too, if we could have her maybe stay there for a few months until this committee gets up and running, maybe even until we have that transition in the fall. Yeah. And we can teach people to take proper notes and whatnot, because this is information we're going to be receiving as council too. So we want to get it right. So I just put that out there as a suggestion. So.
Okay, so yeah, that sounds really good. It is a new committee again, and there has been, quite a need. These committees are always good for the community building. So, yeah. So, Councillor Flagler, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Martin. I'm agreeing with the statements thus far, but I would like Sherry to stay until the new committee is born.
Yeah. So, and we can review it then. It doesn't mean that, you know, you may think you need to still hang on, but right now that would be the best, that would be a good motion. Councillor Doherty, go ahead.
So I agree, we should sync it with the rest of the committees, and they should be basically like the other committees, which is there's a council and an alternate. Now, is the intention when it comes to December, when we do this, that all these members positions be filled from, or is it just the two? Like, are you looking for 10 people?
Through you, Mayor Martin. So the way that it's structured today, you have, following the adjustments just stated, there would be counselors, primary and alternate, 2 adults and 2 youth advisors that are the core of the committee. So that is Debbie Otley, who's currently the co-chair with Councillor Flagler. The other members of the committee, we have 2 that are advisors, the participant, we have volunteers that also join or provide support and what have you.
But my question is, how many of those are we going to be looking for in December to do it? Is it the 4?
Through you, Mayor Martin, I assume that the structure outlined within the terms of reference would be the one that we follow, not only through the transitional period, but going forward into the new year. So the individuals who are currently holding those positions are really, we've voted them in through the committee process, but they would recognize that their official term will end with the appointment process in the fall. We will encourage them to put their names forward for the new committee that will come into place, I believe, January of 2025.
And we'll advertise it similar to what we do other committees. Okay, if I may, through the chair, one more. It says the report, it is not necessary for the committee to submit reports to council. Why is that?
Through you, Mayor Martin, it's actually something that I've drawn from other terms of reference. We do submit all of our meeting minutes, our agendas. We place those on our website. We come to you with our recommendations in terms of reference, but in terms of not providing reports, it's not, and again, it's only my humble opinion, but it's not a reporting mechanism. It certainly is to ensure there is a body that is working towards a vibrant space for our youth, whether that's events, whether that's bringing forward our concerns. Perhaps that there is an element for reporting there, but I'm not sure that this particular committee would be, unless we're directed to do so, would be expected to provide reports as a structured element of the terms of reference. That's my opinion.
Okay, Bob and then Bev.
Through you, Mayor Martin, further to Sherry's comments. So we would bring the agendas and minutes and in the councillor activity report. So the councillor who's attending those meetings would then report on the activities of the committee. Should there be a recommendation to council that comes from the committee, at that point there would be a report to council to either approve or not approve that item.
Yeah, kind of like farther down the agenda where they're asking for usage of the town hall. That's where council has their input in it. Okay, Councillor Flagler.
Through you, Mayor Martin. I'm the membership part, Sherry, I'm sorry, I've just kind of noticed this. Council is acting as a co-chair, and then you have 4 volunteers, and one of them is acting as co-chair. Who's the chair?
Through you, Mayor Martin, the co-chair today is Debbie Otley. She's one of the 2 adults and she's the co-chair. This, as it stands now.
Right, but it also says here 2 members of council with 1 acting as co-chair, so it's.
The element of co being that there are 2, instead of having 1 chair, we have 2 co-chairs. 1 co-representing the council and 1 co-representing the community.
Thank you, Sherry.
You're most welcome.
Councillor Doherty.
Sure, Mr. And then the budget. So that we don't have anything on the budget in 24, do we, or did we something in there? Okay.
through you, Mayor Martin, we don't have a budget line item for this. The committee's aim is to raise money through fundraising efforts, through sponsorship. There has been discussion that there may need to be some money to help us start, if you will, some of our initial events. And we have discussed it, but that's again, something that has to come through as a recommendation of committee. We, at our last meeting, we didn't have it on the agenda. It was discussed in other business. We'll bring it forward if there's a full recommendation.
Well, just as it says that not to exceed any budget amount provided within the council's operating budget. That's going to be for a futuristic committee.
Through you, Mayor Martin, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so, yeah, so the thing, I think the motion was that we approve this format. And the staff position can be reevaluated when we redo this in fall. So somebody wanted to make that motion? Moved by Councillor Flagler, seconded by Councillor Doherty. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the next item here is the shop local contest. Go ahead, Terry.
Through you, Mayor Martin, HBM Shop Local Contest, the goal of it is to incentivize township residents and visitors to purchase goods and services locally to bolster our Havelock-Belmont-Methuen economy. A number of our fellow townships offer shop local competition contests. We've been a part of those, working with the Chamber of Commerce in the past. This, however, is one that is Havelock-Belmont-Methuen Township sponsored. It is an item that was budgeted for as part of the 2024 budget process and approved. For those that are attending today, there are some elements that I'll share, I think would be worthwhile. So the contest will run from May 1st through to the end of October, which is our primary tourism season. Each purchase of $20 or more from a local HBM retail store or service provider is considered one contest entry. We ask people to hold on to the receipts, their paid invoices, to provide evidence of that, and that can be a simple picture captured, emailed to us, dropped off to the office. They can do that Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, or simply drop that in an envelope into our gray drop-off box outside the municipal office door. The contest has been synchronized with our township, our monthly regular council meetings. And so that means the first and third Tuesday of the month, when it comes time to draw our contest winners, we hope to introduce that with your acceptance as part of our council meeting process, part of the agenda, if you will. And that way we can share that as part of our report to the community. As part of the contest rules, we have outlined a few things. It is a bi-monthly contest, so there will be 2 winners per month. Again, aligned with our council meetings, recognizing that in the summertime, we do take a break. So there will only be 1 council meeting, I think in July and August, but we will simply hold the secondary, working with our chief administrative officer to make sure that happens. All prize items will be purchased by the township. Again, it's to support local businesses. So this would be gift certificates, gift cards, local spending, of course. And the contest is open to residents and visitors of the township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen. We felt that was important. A lot of people who rent cottages in our area through the summer months, and we hope that they will participate as well. Contest participants must be 18 years of age or older. Prizes will range, again, as I mentioned, local retail gift cards and or certificates. Contest winners are to accept those gift prizes and gift cards as they're presented and not exchanged for cash value. Contest participants can submit multiple contest entries, and we hope that they do, and can potentially win multiple bi-monthly draws. Contest winners agree to have their name published on the township website, and of course announced through social media. And the township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen assumes no responsibility or liability for any of the product or services that the individual may have purchased or used. and subject to their entry of the contest. Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen staff and counselors, as well as their immediate families, are not eligible for any HBM Shop Local contest winnings. For their immediate families, they are defined as spouse or significant other, child, parent, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, and/or grandchildren.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right then. So, Councilor Doherty, go ahead.
Who administers the economic development or HBM?
This is an economic development initiative. So as your economic development officer, I will work to administer it in terms of working with the staff in front. We'll make sure that we have sound processes to accept and receive the evidence. And then in terms of presenting those receipts for selection, there will be a mechanism that we'll bring forward to council as part of the council meeting so that you're able to randomly select the winners.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's council's thoughts here? Okay, you want to move that, Chair? Moved by Councilor Doherty, seconded. Deputy Mayor Webb, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is Josh Story with regard to the rates for, I think, the indoor rates for the arena. Hello, Josh.
Yes. Good morning, hello. So yes, the purpose of this report is to obtain council's approval to set the pickleball and basketball rates. Staff's recommendation to follow suit with our neighboring municipalities at $5 per participant for a 2-hour session.
Okay, thank you. Good job on the report, Josh.
Thank you.
What's council's thoughts here?
Yeah, I'll move the motion just with a question. What are we doing to advertise this, and when will the pickleball, like what are the hours we'll be running the pickleball during?
Through you, Mayor Martin, it will be located on the end of the laneway sign as well as social media. We are thinking about Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. For the daytime, we're thinking 2 to noon, kind of before the heat of the day. And we're also thinking for an evening Wednesday session, possibly 6 to 8 or 7 till 9 p.m.
I don't know whether I heard 2 to noon or whether 10 till noon.
10 till noon, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so a lot of excitement around this, hearing from lots of people, so it'll be nice to get it rolling. What's council's thoughts?
What was the start date again? Sorry.
Through Mayor Martin, we're waiting for our extra staff, so it would be following Celebrate Havelock.
Okay. All right then. Councilor Flagler?
Yes, hi, through you, Mayor Martin, how are we putting the lines on the arena? What are you gonna use, or what does townships use?
Through you, Mayor Martin, we had purchased pickleball court tape when we purchased our equipment, but with all the other events that have been going on, it is kind of concerning. It would turn into a trip hazard. I'm going to reach out to our line painter for the arena ice. I had heard that he also lines the concrete for indoor sports programming. So I'm going to reach out to him for a quotation, see what that's going to be, and if it's possible, we will return the pickleball tape that we've purchased.
Okay, one follow-up question. So if they paint it, does that paint stay on? And then you just put the ice over top? Is that how that works, or does the paint have to be removed?
Through you, Mayor Martin. So yes, the paint will stay on. It is recommended that is an oil-based paint. So there isn't any interruption with we go to put the ice in.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay. So Somebody want to move?
I moved it.
You moved it and you second? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. The next item here is with regards to a permit for mobile canteen at the medical, or former medical center.
Sign on it.
Yes, through you, Mayor Martin, this report presents a mobile canteen permit application for approval by council. The permit is in the name of Jennifer Gatto for Gatto Gelato, and Mrs. Gatto is here in attendance, and she's happy to answer any questions that council may have. The canteen will be located at the 75 Concession Street location, which is now Horizon Family Dentistry in the parking lot. Deputy Mayor Webb.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, seconder. Councilor Flagler, any questions? All in favor? And that's carried. So, okay, a lot of people looking forward to it, eh?
We have.
They'll be down for ice cream later.
Very good up your talk.
Okay. Next item here is the appointment of a weed inspector, something we do every year. Councilor Doherty moving that.
Right. Yeah, I'll second. You just have
Another question?
whose name is this under? Bob. Bob, can answer the question. So, I read the report here in terms of some of the weeds they deal with. Is there a way we can get a hold of them? Like, obviously, we've got a few issues around, I guess they're more invasive species, weeds, but with that knotwood up in the Matheson property. Can we maybe inquire with them if that's something they deal with or something they've had experience dealing with? Because it's an ongoing issue, I know, for the Matheson committee, or will be moving forward.
Yes, through you, Mayor Martin. So the weed inspectors typically deal with the noxious weeds. And they don't deal with invasive species. However, we can certainly reach out to them and lean on their expertise and see if they can at least guide us perhaps to a solution.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? And that's carried. Next item here is the Peterborough County Police Service Board. This is a new board that's they're moving forward with. One of you have anything more hurt to speak about it?
I don't, I'm still learning a lot about it. It's kind of changing here and still being put in place. I know I got an email, I don't know if the CEO received one as well, but I gotta go receive some training, so possibly after the training, I can provide council with a more updated report on what kind of structure we're gonna see here and, you know, I don't know what the process is moving forward, but as I said, it's all kind of new to me and I think it's all changing day to day as we speak. So when I get more complete answers, I will bring them to council, so.
But yeah, there's a lot happening right now, and I think there's some things that we'll have to move on with some of them pieces that have to be done before the first meeting, so. Okay, all right, so the recommendation is here that we appoint Deputy Mayor Webb to this committee as he's already the chair of the Police Service Board. Okay, moved by Councilor Flagler, seconded by Councilor Doherty. All in favor? That's carried. All right then, moving into correspondence. And the first item here on action items is Debbie Otley with the Youth Committee asking about in-kind use of the town hall for the Youth Committee meeting. Yeah, moved by Deputy Mayor Webb. Second by Councilor Doherty. Any questions or comments around that? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. This request is for the youth dance, April 26th, and it's also for a movie. So that's not just our dates of meeting, this is the extra dates that we are requesting. Because they're gonna do a movie matinee 1 to 3, and then a movie night 7 to 9. When that date, May 18th on Saturday.
Yeah, that's good.
Sorry, Council Flagler, could you say what the date of the youth dance was again?
26th of April.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's on this 26th on a Friday, a youth dance, and then the movie matinee was the 18th.
Your dancing shoes on.
I'll be there.
So,
I'll be there.
okay. All right, so we have a mover and a seconder. Any other questions around that? All in favor? And that's carried. Next item here is celebrate Havelock Glory Bridges requiring in-kind municipal town hall usage. So moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councilor Flanagan. Question? Comment? All in favor? And that's carried. So there's a couple information items here. One is with regard to Your Health Matters news release that came out last week. Any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Doherty.
To you, Mayor, so my understanding is right that they're setting up a department at the county for this particular venture.
Yeah, like it's through the recruitment thing.
Yeah. But in terms of setting up a department, no, we have one recruiter. And
Yeah.
I'll just speak for myself. I don't foresee us hiring any more than the one. If in terms of expanding the department is what
We know who we're dealing with, so it'd be a department.
Understood.
4 by 2025. I'm just a little confused on the whole process, but we'll see how it shakes out too.
Okay. Councilor Flanagan.
Yes, I do realize that our healthcare is changing. My concern is there gonna be a cost for that? A fee? Because I have heard, actually, I know for a fact that when you go into the medical center or these spots where they have what they call TB doctor, they're charging for that fee, which is, you actually can't charge for it, it's healthcare. Everything goes under your health card, so that was only my concern, if there's gonna be fees involved in that.
So I imagine they'll be coming around and doing a circuit here, like when Lori Ritchie does come to present to council, it would be good questions to ask them. For today, it's just information. Okay.
And yes, there will be a fee.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a matter of who picks up that fee, whether it's us or the taxpayers.
So, okay, and the next item on here for information was the TAC committee. I'll see it. You guys the planning. Aria was there.
Yes, Aria attends those.
Yeah. So, and like I said, it's information. Motion to receive correspondence information moved by Deputy Mayor Webb. Seconder. Councilor Doherty. No questions around it? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so the next item here is committee liaison report, and first item there is the county update.
Hey, county updates, I think it's one main thing last week was the physician recruiter, Lori Ritchie, came and presented to council. The one thing that she discussed a number of issues around doctor recruitment, but the one thing that she brought up was, and maybe I'm gonna turn to the CAO because he could probably explain this a little better than me, but for the public, there's 2 lists for doctor recruit if you need a doctor. Or sorry, there's a list right now that's being run by the province that a lot of people are putting their name on. That is the wrong list, and she gave us the name of the right list. So I just wanted to make I'll turn it over to the CEO here in a second. He'll run you through the proper names, but you basically want to get off the old list and onto this new list. Otherwise, a doctor's not going to be calling you, to take care of you because they're not looking at the old list. Before I confuse anybody any further, Bob, I'll turn over to you with the proper names of what's right and what's wrong.
Yes, through you, Mayor Martin, and this relates to the previous item that appeared in the correspondence with respect to the survey that is now being conducted by the healthcare recruiter. And previously, the old provincial list was named the Healthcare Connect list. And apparently, we are told that that doctors are reluctant to use that list. That is the previous provincial list. So through the survey, they are now creating a new list called the Healthcare Needs Assessment Form. And if you put your name on that list, our doctor recruiter will be advocating for any doctor that indicates that there are spaces available on their roster. The doctor recruiter will be assisting in that process and approaching the doctor to suggest, here, we have names in your area that are available, and you may now put these on your roster. So there's a slight change in that process, and certainly she will explain it a lot better than I can when she comes to visit council. We don't have a specific date for that just yet, but she will be coming to visit council and take us through that entire process.
Thank you very much for that, Bob. And further to that, just for residents that are inquiring about that, I think there'll be something on our website, if there isn't already, in terms of the name of the new proper list that you should be putting your name on. So
yes, sorry, through you, Mayor, we have promoted that through our social media, so it is out there.
thank you.
Okay, Councilor Doherty.
The first list you mentioned, provincial list. The second list, who's sponsoring it? Is it a provincial initiative again, or is it a county initiative, or Eastern Ontario, or just what is it? Oh, I'll shut down.
No, through you, Mayor Martin, the second list, the new healthcare needs assessment form, is not a provincial initiative. It is an initiative of the Peterborough County and the townships of Peterborough County.
And I think eventually they're hoping that they can get outside with the city too, so it's one big list between the city and the county.
It's our own list, and not to get into the details, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. The problem with the old list is, as it was explained to Bob and I, was people get put on the list, it gets ranked in terms of, I guess, I don't know, level of care, right? So people who need the highest level of care go to the top of the list right away. So on the doctor side, what you have is they like to have some patients that come in a lot and some patients that are healthy, right? To kind of have a balance to their practice. When they go to said list, all they're getting is basically high maintenance patients. Which is why, you know, they can take a couple of them, but they can't. So it's a much better to go to a list like ours where they're not ranked. So I mean, the person you take off may not be a high needs patient, right? Whereas when you go to the old, is it Government Connect or something Connect?
Healthcare Connect.
The first 100 you see there are going to be patients that if they take them on, they're probably going to be seeing them 2 or 3 times a week. Like they're high needs patients. So that's why what we are told, why the recruiter, from speaking with a lot of the physicians, speaking with those physicians, they're just staying away from that list because they don't want to take on high needs patients.
We go for low hanging fruit.
Well, no, I'm just saying that's why we are where we are. And there's a lot more obviously to it that we'll get into obviously when Ms. Ritchie comes, but that's part of the problem.
I guess that's specifically, there's so many questions for the survey and news release to go out prior to her coming to the townships. We would maybe have address some of these questions at that time. And she's obviously pretty busy, so.
Very busy, very busy. So she's done a few, I think she started her rounds, but there's 9 municipalities to do, so.
Oh, no, we spoke with her yesterday and they're meeting actually today, I believe, as she said, right, Bob?
Yep. To establish perhaps a touring schedule. She has not started.
I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know you spoke to her.
And not, sorry, Drew, and not to let anything out, but once she conveyed to the CEO and I was that she'll be coming here as a part of that. But if any other time council wants her to come and speak, you know, we can have her come. So.
Okay, so. All right then, so this is that's given, it's pretty well, it wasn't a very long meeting, but
no.
Yeah, there was some other things around customer service policy and things like that we adopted at that meeting too, so yeah, well, it's that's what it was, so okay. All right then, so that's the county update. There's two items here from Councillor Flagler with regards to youth committee meetings from January 25th, 2024 and February 22nd, 2024. The minutes are there. Is there any questions? If not, we can receive both reports. Okay, so we can receive the committee liaison reports moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, and I don't see any written notice of motions. Is there any oral notice of motion for today? Hearing none. No other business. So we'll move into bylaws. And the first bylaw here is a bylaw to authorize an environmental impacts mitigation measures agreement with John and Deborah Nurse. Moved by Councillor Doherty, seconded by Deputy Mayor Webb. All in favor? And that's carried. And the next bylaw is being a bylaw to appoint weed inspectors. Moved by Councillor Doherty, seconded by Councillor Flagler. All in favor? And that's carried. So the next item on the agenda is a closed session under section 239 of the Municipal Act. For personal matters of identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees. So motion to go into closed session. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor, and that's carried. And we'll give Leah. Motion to resume, moved by Councillor Flagler, seconded by Councillor Doherty, all in favor, and that's carried. So we have one motion coming out of closed session. And that motion would be Bob.
Yes, through you, Mayor Martin, the motion is that the vacancy on the library board be advertised and filled through applicants by council upon receipt of applicants. Yeah.
Okay. So moved by Councillor Flagler, seconded by Deputy Mayor Webb. Any questions, comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so the next item on here is a confirming bylaw for today's meeting. I'll move over to that. Councillor Flagler is moving that, and second by Deputy Mayor Webb. All in favor? All in favor? And that's carried. And motion to adjourn, moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Flagler. All in favor? And that's carried.